All right, let's get right into it. We all think we know the story of immigration, right? You arrive with almost nothing, you work incredibly hard, your kids do a little better, and then your grandkids are fully American. It's a really powerful, inspiring narrative. But is that one story still the whole story today? Listen to this quote from Mario Puzo, the author of The Godfather. He just captures that classic idea perfectly. This dream of a total transformation, of leaving centuries of poverty behind in a new country. He literally calls it a miracle. And that right there is the big question we're tackling. Does the journey for someone arriving in Europe or the US today look anything like the one Puzo was talking about? We're going to break down that classic story and then hold it up against our modern reality. Okay, so first up, let's really unpack that original model. How was success supposed to work? For generations, this was considered the blueprint. For more than a century, the key word was assimilation. And the idea was pretty much a one-way street. Newcomers were expected to learn the language, adopt the values, pick up the customs, and over time just blend in. The goal was complete absorption into the mainstream. So a sociologist named Milton Gordon actually laid this all out in these clear stages. Now what's really fascinating here is the assumed order of things. Step 1, you learn the culture. Step 2, you get into the institutions like schools and jobs. And only after all that happens do you get to the really personal stuff, like making close friends or marrying someone outside your community. It's a very predictable, straight-line path. And you have to remember, this model was based on a very specific moment in history, those huge waves of European immigration to the US. First, you had people from places like Germany and Ireland. Then came an even bigger wave from Italy, Poland, and Russia. That whole period, before the US slammed the door on immigration in 1924, is what forged America's entire idea of how this process should work. And, for a lot of those groups, it looked like the model actually worked. Look at this chart from 1990. After a few generations, the descendants of German, Irish, Italian, and Russian immigrants had household incomes that were right there at the national average, or even higher. So the economic part of that promise? Yeah, for many, it really did come true. The theory that explains all this is called human capital theory. It's basically the classic, pull yourself up by your bootstraps idea. It says that your success comes down to you, your skills, your education, how hard you work. It just assumes that the playing field is level and that effort is what really counts. But how does that classic American model hold up today? To figure that out, let's jump over to the European Union, especially since 2014. The whole conversation there has changed, and those old assumptions are being seriously put to the test. You see, today you hear a lot less talk about assimilation and a lot more about integration. It might seem like a small word change, but it is a huge shift in thinking. Integration isn't about giving up your identity. It's about being able to participate in the core parts of a new society, the job market, the schools, while also having the space to keep your own culture. It's more of a two-way street. And wow, this slide shows you how much more complex things have gotten. Instead of Gordon's 3 simple steps, look at all the different things we measure now. It's not just about learning the language anymore. It's about your legal status, finding housing, your physical and mental health, and even that fuzzy concept of belonging. The whole puzzle is just way, way bigger. And here's maybe the biggest difference of all. Those big waves to the US were mostly economic migrants, people choosing to leave for a better life. But a huge number of people arriving in Europe recently are refugees and asylum seekers. They're not just looking for a better opportunity, they're fleeing war and persecution. Their starting point is completely different. So, with these totally different contexts, what kind of obstacles are people up against? Let's do a direct comparison of the barriers then versus now. Back in the day, the biggest hurdles were really about social prejudice. You had intense anti-Catholicism aimed at the Irish and Italians, and just vicious anti-Semitism against Jewish immigrants. Now, don't get me wrong, prejudice is still very much alive. But today's biggest barriers are often structural, baked right into the system. We're talking about things like de-skilling, where a trained doctor can't get her degree recognized and ends up driving a taxi, or just running into systemic discrimination when you're trying to find a job or rent an apartment. This quote from Luis Rodriguez just hits so hard. It shows you exactly what a structural barrier feels like from the inside. He's talking about a school that wasn't a ladder up for everyone. Instead, it was sorting kids, putting them on different tracks based on who they were. It shows that even when you have access to something, the system itself can hold you back. And then there's this uniquely modern problem called protracted displacement.
This is that awful legal limbo where asylum seekers can wait for months, sometimes years for a decision. You're physically in a country, but you're not allowed to be part of it. You can't legally work, you can't really plan your future, you're just stuck. It's an enormous source of stress and a massive barrier to ever feeling like you belong.
Okay, so if the roadblocks are different, what about the pathways? The support systems that help people get on their feet? Well, just like everything else, that story has changed completely.
In the past, support was almost all informal, driven by the community itself. You had your ethnic neighborhoods where everyone spoke your language, you had religious groups, and yeah, you even had corrupt political machines that would give you a city job in exchange for your vote. But today, the whole system is way more formal and run by the state. We've got laws, EU directives, and government-funded programs for everything from learning the language to getting legal help.
And here are just a few really cool, concrete examples of these modern, top-down policies. In Germany, they have special language kindergartens to get kids learning German from a really young age. Berlin has this amazing program called Burrow Mothers, where they trained experienced refugee women to help new families navigate the system. These are super specific, targeted programs that you just wouldn't have seen 100 years ago. But it's not all one cohesive system. A huge tension today is the difference between national laws and what happens on the ground, in the cities. A country might have really tough immigration laws, but a city within that country, what we often call a sanctuary city, might decide to create its own, more welcoming policies, providing services even to people who don't have legal status.
Okay, let's pull all these threads together. We've looked at the old model, we've looked at the new reality. So what does this all mean for the end goal? Is there even one single finish line anymore?
And this, right here, is the key takeaway. The old model promised one single, linear path. You follow the steps, and in 3 generations, you're fully assimilated. But the new reality is all about segmented paths. There isn't just one destination anymore. Some newcomers might successfully integrate into the middle class. Others might get trapped in permanent poverty. And yet another group might find success by building a strong, vibrant, ethnic community that doesn't fully assimilate at all.
And that leaves us with this final, really big question. That old idea of the melting pot basically said there was one right way to belong. But maybe, just maybe, belonging looks different now. Can we build societies that are strong, not because we force everyone down the exact same path, but because we make room for many different kinds of journeys? That's really the challenge we're all grappling with today.